flew with President Reagan to Iceland for the summit with
Reykjavik.
Reykjavik with Mikhail Gorbachev. What was Gorbachev like at that time?
Well, let me tell you, what was Ronald Reagan like? I first met him in 1976, and I met him out at his ranch. I guess it was Palisades, his home in Pacific Palisades. And I just thought he was a wonderful guy. I liked him, and he was Mr. Conservative, and he was the one I had decided I was going to support in 1976. I liked Gerald Ford, but I thought I'd support Reagan, so I did. But Ronald Reagan is a wonderful, as I said, he's a good man, a great president. He's got a 14-year-old aspect to him, which is extraordinarily charming. A lot of him behaves as a boy. He likes practical jokes. You know, and we had, I won't get into them now, we had some at the Geneva Summit. But let me tell you about Reykjavik. That was called, Gorbachev invited us to a hurry-up summit in 1986. It was in the fall, October, before the election. And we said, okay, we will go. We had seen Gorbachev at Geneva a year before to get-together summit. And so we flew off to Reykjavik, and we stayed at the hotel there, and they went to Hofty House, which was this house which was a sort of out on a point all by itself out there, and that's where the negotiations took place. And I was communications director and in charge of the speech, which was to be delivered by President Reagan at Keflavik Air Base after the successful summit. And so I wrote the speech, and I decided to take it out myself to Hofty House. And here's where we're on Hofty House. The first floor was the room where they talked to each other. And on the upstairs, you walked up these stairs, and down on the right side was where the Russians were. And on the left side was the American room, and the middle room was the Commons room where we all got together. And so I was there, Gorbachev and the Russians were in their room, and I was in our room, and I went in there, and I said, what's going on? They said, well, they're getting a deal to end all nuclear weapons. And I said, what? You know? And so I was taken aback, and they were going to have a deal to get rid of the missiles, all of them in Europe. I said, we ought to leave 100 of ours there, because the Russians, the Russians will cheat, and if we get all ours out, it'd be living hell getting them back in. But if we got 100 there, there's no problem putting in 101 or 102. But Pearl and I were arguing, Richard Pearl were arguing with that. Then the Russians come out, and they're going down for the final negotiations because they extended the day. So there's a very narrow walkway from the Russians by the common room, by our room, and down the stairs. And they're walking out, and the Russians, one by one, these grim-faced Bolsheviks. And Gorbachev was not a big guy, and I stood right in that doorway, and I looked at him, and I said, that's Al Capone. That's exactly the thought that occurred to me. And he's a great peacemaker now, but I said that is one of the toughest looking people I've ever seen. So then let me tell you one other story there. I went back to the common room. Only two people were in the room with with the interpreters, Schultz and Reagan, of course. And so we stayed in the common room, and I was in the common room sitting there waiting, and they were down there negotiating. And so this Russian security guy comes up, and they must have had a file on me. You're the hardline Buchanan, there he is. And this guy, security guy, comes up and says, what do you think you can do with SDI? You going to shoot down missiles? You can't shoot down missiles. And so I said, do you know what the Houston Astrodome is? And I started explaining to him, we're going to put this over the United States. And none of your missiles are going to get through it, fella. And Ken Edelman comes up to me and says, Pat, introduces the character, have you met Field Marshal Akramarov, the chief of the Soviet General Staff? That was the guy I was talking to. But can I tell one more?
Please, keep it going, Pat.
All right, so they came out of the meeting, and I was with Dennis Thomas, who was an aide to Don Regan, who was chief of staff. And we went around the top. We went around the top. There was one floor up, like the folks up on the banister there, looking down at me, or up there on the stairs, and watched them when they came out. And I looked out and looked down at Reagan, and his face was a mask of rage. I'd never seen Reagan like that. And he was stiff. And Dennis Thomas turns to me and says, I don't like the body language. I said, you got that right. So then we go out, and I listen, and Reagan comes out with him and walks Gorbachev to the car, and they're talking. And Pete Sousa, I'm in the car behind the main car, the limo, so Pete Sousa's a photographer. He said, he comes in, he jumps in the front seat as the motorcade takes off, and he said, geez, you should have heard Gorbachev and Reagan. I said, what did they say? You know, and Pete says, Reagan told him, you know, Gorbachev said, I don't know what I could have done, and Reagan said, you could have said yes. And Gorbachev then got in his limousine and left. What he meant was, what happened was Gorbachev, they had a deal, and they got downstairs, and they got in the room, and Reagan was going to have a deal, come home and announce the end of nuclear weapons. He hated nuclear weapons. He thought they were god-awful things he would tell me. And so then, so what, you know, I've just missed my point here. So we got in the limo, and Reagan heads to the embassy, okay? And so he goes to the embassy. The embassy is run by my old buddy, Shelley, and Shelley almost grew up with him, Nick Ruey, he's ambassador. So we get there, and Reagan is in a room by himself, and he comes out, and he's yelling and cussing. And what's he cussing about? He's yelling about an editorial in Human Events magazine he had read, conservative publication, criticizing him for going to Reykjavik. He was really concerned about these conservatives, but he was really angry. I've never seen him like that. So we take off in the motorcade and head to Keflavik, which is about an hour away, the air base there. And so I've got the speech that says, this is a great success, this summit, you know. And so I'm writing, so I got cards, and I put them on my knee, and I printed out words to insert into the speech, taking out this part and saying the summit did not succeed, you know, and giving the president words on it. I got in my library, went out to Keflavik, we get there about an hour. I've got a picture of Reagan looking at these cards, and I'm leaning over telling him, this is what it says, and this is how we got to change it when you go out in front of the folks at the air base. And so he walks out. The people at the air base had been waiting 6 hours. They didn't know the whole conference is going to be extended, you know. So they're sitting there with a family and kids, all these airmen, waiting for Ronald Reagan. And when he walked out there, you know, I have a hard time telling it without choking up. That place exploded. Cheers, you know. And so Reagan goes, and he just gets up and gives one of his Reagan-like speech, and these folks are cheering. It was just such a moving moment. So, you know, there was another moment, though. I told him, I said, where's Schultz? Schultz came back on a separate plane, and he had a press conference after the summit. And Dennis Thomas said, I said, what is Schultz saying, you know, at the press conference? He said, Schultz looks like somebody just ran over his dog. You know? Schultz is down, he's morose, you know, and he's talking about the summit. So we did on to Air Force One, and I got on the plane. I said, and we're there saying everybody was down because the summit blew up. We didn't get any deal. And I said, you know, look, I said, if we can't sell this, the President of the United States walking out of a summit rather than give up the weapon he thinks could defend the United States and only kills missiles, if we can't sell that, we don't belong in the White House. And so we were flying back, and everybody else broke up. And I was sitting on the back of the plane with, not in the back, but in the staff section with Terry Dolan, who was a speechwriter who helped write the speech. And we're firing down the scotches all the way back to, from Keflavik all the way back to Andrews, you know. And guess who comes walking back in his, one of these running suits? It's Ronald Reagan, the President of the United States. Summit's blown up and everything. And we said, sir, you did a great job and everything. And he says, Pat, have I told you the time about when Jimmy Stewart and I were in, you know, and he's talking about Hollywood movie stores. And people ask what Reagan was like. And that's what the man was like. He was just, this was a tense time, and it was just, he was magnificent. I mean, you really had to love the man, quite frankly. He's a very lovable man.